There we go. Good morning, everyone. My name is Katie O'Connor, and I'm the Community Research Manager for the Partnership for Inclusive Innovation. And welcome to the final presentations webinar for the 2022 cohort of the Georgia Smart Communities Challenge. I want to let everybody know that this webinar will be recorded and made available afterward. And I'm just going to share a very quick presentation with you all. Just about the partnership. So today we're going to hear from 4 of our 6 2022 projects. They will be City of Atlanta, Athens-Clarke County, Henry County, and Savannah, which is an alumni project. The other 2 projects for the 2022 year were Columbus and Warner Robins, and they're actually going to be presenting at an in-person event in Statesboro, a kickoff for the next winners of the grant program. So if anyone here would like an invitation to that event, if you're going to be in Statesboro on September 6th, please let me know, and I would love to give you an invitation. So first, I want to share a bit about the partnership. We are a public-private partnership that's catalyzing innovation for shared economic prosperity. And we have 4 pillars through which we provide support for innovators. Those are economic opportunity, workforce development, student engagement, and community research, which is my pillar. Community research matches local governments with university researchers to fund dynamic civic innovation projects that benefit the community while getting the research out of the lab and into the real world of complication for better feedback loops. The grant program, since its inception in 2018, has been called the Georgia Smart Communities Challenge. But I want to let you guys know today that we are working on rebranding this program for simplification and to fit in better with our other pillar programs. So going forward, this program is going to just be called the Community Research Grant Program. So with that, let's get started by hearing from the Atlanta team. And Atlanta team, you can go ahead and share your screen and get started.
Sure, I will share my screen.
I see Anu though.
Oh, great. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen. Unless Anu wants, I'll just go to share my screen since I'm already all queued up. So, okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, everyone. My name is Julie Kim, and I am the chair of the School of Architecture here at Georgia Tech. I'm also the director and the founder of the Flourishing Communities Collaborative, which is a research and design lab, which operates as a platform that brings students, faculty, practitioners, and the community together to solve social and cultural problems. And we specifically work with those communities that are disadvantaged. I want to thank the Partnership for Inclusive Innovation for their generous support for this project, the Thomasville Heights project, building strategies for energy efficiency retrofits. Without your support, this project would have been really difficult to happen. So I want to thank you for that. So the project itself is really, our project was about energy burden. And I think one of the things that we recognized when we spoke with community members that many of them didn't understand what energy burden meant. So we would say, well, how much money do you spend on energy? They know what their bills are. What's your income? They know what that is. I said, well, that's what your energy burden is. And one of the things that's very clear in the community that we worked in Thomasville Heights and Norwood Manor, it ranks in the top 7% for energy burden statewide. And what ends up happening is those communities that are disadvantaged or lack access to such resources end up consuming more energy because their building envelope is just not weather tight. So we started with the kind of I guess the kind of idea that, what would happen if we implemented a pilot program that would protect a building and its interior from the elements, and then how might that reduce energy use and increase comfort? I should add here also that along with Georgia Tech being part of this team, we were working with the City of Atlanta, grateful for our partnerships there. Focused community strategies, they were instrumental in kind of acting as that liaison between our project and the community. Trust is always one of the most difficult things to secure at the very start, and then to secure that and to maintain that. So really grateful to Focus Community Strategies for their work and their support in the project. We couldn't have done it without them. And then our partners at Morehouse College of Medicine, who have been instrumental in the kind of analysis and interviewing post retrofit work. So some of the things that we started off with as our objectives is we wanted to find ways where we could reduce energy consumption and the cost. How might that also improve resident health and comfort? And ultimately, we were interested in alleviating energy burdens. And I should add here that in this project, we started by thinking of this as a pilot program. So we started with a fairly small sample of houses. I mean, our ambition was 12 to 15. I think we ended up with like 15 or 16 houses. Anu, who was the project manager and brilliant graduate research assistant, who just earned her Master of Science in High Performance Building at Georgia Tech, was really a critical component of our team. So, and here you can see everybody who we were involved with. And I neglected to mention the contractor, the most important piece, because they are the ones who actually implemented the retrofits. Just quickly, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. It was really more just to kind of share kind of like the trajectory of the project. We had what you see here in kind of the hatched red is what our original timeline was, and then what actually happened. And so everything kind of slid forward by 3 months. And then you can see the duration of some of the work from the community outreach that kind of continued over the whole course of the project, the data processing analysis, that these things actually ended up overlapping quite a bit more than what we had originally anticipated. And it was just one of those learning measures for us as a team. So Anu, I think this is whenever you are going to step in. I'm going to hand it over to Anu now. He's going to talk a little bit more about the actual project itself and some of the data and the analysis that we did. So Anu, I'll continue to drive for you.
Okay, thank you. So here we kind of can see a little snapshot of our project summary and like the timeline that our participants went through. So we were able to have about 20 stakeholder engagement events in which we were able to build trust with the community and advertise our pilot program, and we're able to enroll 16 houses. And we currently have one report is almost completed. And our pilot participants went through this process where they had to fill out an application, we had to collect utility bills, aerial thermography of their houses, and the energy audit and blower door test, which I'll talk more about later as well. And then this is split by retrofits and weatherization. So we have pre-retrofit data collection and similar post-retrofit data collection as well. Next. So here you can see our energy efficiency retrofit package. Typically, it took about 3 to 6 hours to retrofit a house. We put safety first and adding smoke alarms as needed and LED lighting, which easily reduces energy use. And then we repaired ducts and sealed them so there's no air leakage while systems are on. Then we weatherized the house by adding attic insulation, weather stripping windows and doors, sealing cracks in the walls, and foam sealing any holes around water pipes. Next. Here's another snapshot. This is of the different data types that we collected before and after retrofit in order to quantify and determine the impact. Next. So after quantifying a percent difference between pre and post retrofit data collected for each data type, we're able to understand the overall percent improvement from retrofits, with improvement in every category on average. Can you click? Here you can see that the greatest improvement was actually in the occupant comfort, and these weatherization retrofits resulted in an average of 92% increase in comfort for residents. And the least improvement is in energy use at 9%. And now I'm going to go into depth with all of these. So next. The blower door test measures the amount of air infiltration in a house. So we measure a metric called CFM at 50, and the percent difference is on average 25%, which may seem low, but is actually expected according to our contractors. Click. The CFM at 50 also indicates how leaky or tight the building envelope is. And we can see that there's a significant decrease in leaky houses post-retrofit, and some houses even became airtight. Next. So we know that the weather has an impact on energy use, and by examining Atlanta weather data, we divided the total monthly energy usage by a metric called degree days. Can you click? Which measures how many hours in a month that require heating or cooling. This led to a metric for weather normalized energy usage, for which, click, there was a decrease in energy use post retrofit for all the houses except for house F and J, which is likely due to human behavior, but could use further investigation. Next. As you can see in this example, each thermal image is classified with either anomaly, no anomaly, or inconclusive. These anomalies are usually air infiltration in the building envelope. So the pre and post retrofit comparison clearly shows like a massive decrease. Oh, can you click? This shows a massive decrease in anomalies. However, this doesn't necessarily account for whatever anomalies may remain or have been mitigated in the inconclusive images in the yellow. So therefore, there's a 79% average decrease in building envelope anomalies. Next. Finally, we quantified the increase in comfort by asking participants to rank on a scale of 1 to 5 how difficult it is to cool their house in the summer months. Click. According to the pre-retrofit survey, more than about 75% said it was very difficult, or neutral to cool the house. Whereas after weatherization, every single participant that we interviewed said that it was either easy or very easy, which explains the 92% increase in comfort. Next. We also asked many other open-ended questions for feedback on the pilot program. And when asked if they felt any differences in their house post-retrofit, about 92% perceived this difference. About a third also elaborated by saying that they felt that their house had a more balanced or steady temperature throughout different rooms. And about a third also reported less need for air conditioning. About a third also reported lower utility bills, which is a statistic that's expected to grow since it takes a little bit of time after retrofits to see the effect on the utility bills. And some of these houses were retrofitted in February versus others were retrofitted in April and May. Further demographic information also shows that the community is primarily composed of elderly people, and some people have health conditions such as asthma and
Anu, I think we may have lost your audio.
hello? Can you still hear me?
Now we can hear you. Yep, you cut out there partway through what you were just saying.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. I think we can move on to the next slide. Okay.
So I think at this point it hands back over to me. I'm glad that Anu was able to share all the data. As you can see, it's fairly extensive. Kind of like the data gathering initially, and then going through the post analysis to understand if the weatherization that we implemented, if it actually had an impact. So some of our key takeaways were this is that many of the things that we implemented were actually low budget retrofits, but as you can see from the data that it does make a tangible positive impact on these communities, which are vulnerable. And it really does also become, an important step towards preserving legacy homeownership. The other thing that came out of our research and engaging with the community is that it's important that there is really a single sustainable and reliable weatherization program. I mentioned this importance of trust, and that was really important. I don't know if you saw in the previous slide that one of the quotes from our follow-up, a homeowner said, well, I wasn't sure if I would even qualify for this, or I didn't understand what this program was about. And I think that, having a program like this is really important for communities to maintain kind of stability and to introduce resiliency in their daily lives. And so ultimately, weatherization, this idea of like tightening up the building envelope, they're just long-term benefits that, in our short time period, we haven't been able to see yet, but just thinking about benefits towards health, comfort, thinking about building envelope integrity. If you think about if there are gaps in your walls, then, rodents or bugs can get into the house or water can infiltrate. And these are, these small things, can add up over time, which can then compromise the building envelope in a more significant way. So I think one of the things that we're interested in, what this project has validated for us, is that there are a whole series of future opportunities. And one is that, looking for more long-term post-retrofit data collection. I think that will give us more insight on the long-term benefits and how it actually helps to reduce the energy burden. I think, Anu pointed out, the couple of the anomalies where, I think it was house F and G or H and J, but, think about behavior, the behavior of the homeowner. So are there things that we can make even more clear and transparent to homeowners, like simple behavioral modifications that can have impact on their energy usage? And then again, really being able to share in a more open and transparent way, what these programs are and how the applicants can benefit from it. And then ultimately seeking long-term partnerships between and that mirror the kind of partnerships that were part of this project. Where we have academic institutions, we have community groups, we have the city, and we have contractors all working together to solve the specific set of issues. So I think that's it. Anu, do you want to add anything else there at the end?
I think that's everything. Thank you.
Okay.
And we'll take any questions now.
That was an incredible presentation. Thank you so much, you guys. Yeah, we would like to take questions from the audience. If you can use the raise your hand function, then I can allow you to talk as a webinar attendee. So please raise your hand if there are any questions. But Julie, my question would just be to hear you go on a little more about future partnerships and all the exciting things that can happen. I mean, what part of this project do you think you'll take forward to hoping to try to make more future partnerships? Is it the energy efficiency component specifically, or just the relationships with the neighborhood, trying to make them more resilient? Like, are there other directions you could go with this research?
I would say all of the above, both. I should add here too that, some of the things that I've been a part of the strength of our team really is the broad kind of, sets of research agendas that are brought forward, like Tarek Raqqa, who is the director of the High Performance Building Lab, and the kinds of ways that, he brings those kinds of tools to part of this analysis. Danielle Wilkins, who I think is also on this call, also a faculty member in the School of Architecture, and is really focused on using technology as a way to kind of reveal the disparities, I guess I would say, in terms of, disadvantaged communities, and how do we reveal kind of pain points for them, and then do we use that same technology to help address those issues. So I would, I think this was, as I said, was just a pilot program. But, with any pilot program, the idea is that, you test an idea, you understand, what works with it, you understand, how you can make it better, and then you hopefully continue to move forward. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to continue our work with the city and with groups like Focus Community Strategies, Morehouse College, to continue to pursue similar types of ventures. As this was a small sample group that we looked at. It was 16 homes. There are many, many more homes in many similar types of communities in Atlanta, and not just in Atlanta, but in broader kind of communities that need assistance, like this. One last thing I'll just add. I know we're out of time and we need to move on, but to be clear, so all the homeowners who were part of this pilot program all of the work that was done on their homes was done at no cost to them, and there was no expectation for them to reimburse or, or anything at all. There was no burden that was attached to them. And that was actually probably one of the most challenging parts of the project, to communicate that effectively to homeowners, because they kept saying, what's the catch? What's going to happen? And we said, nothing's going to happen. And so we were really happy to see in the end, when you start seeing the data coming out, that, the percentage of increased comfort, and just the kind of satisfaction with the small retrofits that we did, that had a pretty tremendous impact. So we hope that this is just the start of a longer kind of trajectory of projects.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And I see we've got a Q&A function that someone asked a question and Anu was able to answer it. So thank you very much, Anu. And then we have one more question. You mentioned outcomes that 92% received better comfort, 9% saved energy. How does that compare to why they chose to participate, is the question.
Hi. Yeah, I was like typing up the answer, but it's okay. I can just say it out loud, or do we need to move on?
No, go ahead. We still have a few more minutes. And then I've got
Okay.
one person who has their hand raised who will ask a question after you answer this one.
Okay, I was just saying that I don't think we specifically asked why our participants chose to participate. I think that would be a good question to ask if we were to continue this program. Throughout the stakeholder events, engagement events, we advertise the benefits of weatherization, including at our community engagement event, which includes both reduction in energy use and increase in indoor thermal comfort, and understanding whether the participants find the program like worth it, considering that there's like a relatively larger increase in comfort than increase in energy bills would be interesting. I think a lot of the participants, I suspect that a lot of participants would consider it worth it, especially considering this pilot program was at no cost to them other than time. But I also want to point out that the 9% in energy reduction is including the 2 houses that had an increase in energy use after weatherization. So if you look at just the houses that reduced energy use post retrofit, that was actually an average of 19%. So, which is actually closer to like the blower door results. So I think if we consider those 2 houses that increase in energy use outliers, then there's kind of more of an impact of energy consumption reduction.
Excellent. Thank you, Anu. And now we got a question from Jace. I allow you to talk. You can go ahead and speak, Jace, if you want to unmute yourself.
My apologies. I actually didn't have a question. I'm not sure why I'm there. So.
Oh, well, that's all right. And so we just have one more in the Q&A then. Thanks, Jace.
Yep.
One more in the Q&A. Were you able to calculate the average time it would take to take back the amount of money spent on the retrofits in savings on energy?
Okay. That's something that we did not calculate, but would be a very interesting further investigation.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, City of Atlanta team. That was excellent. And to stay on task, we're going to move on to the Athens-Clarke County project. Are you guys ready to get going?
Yes, we're here. I think Chris Carr will project for us.
Thank you so much.
While Chris is pulling up our presentation, I want to thank Penn for this fabulous opportunity to implement a pilot trial to promote climate resilience in Athens-Clarke County. My name's Alan Tate. I'm a faculty member in UGA Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics. I'm a disaster epidemiologist. And I want to share that our team is multi-institutional and thankful for the partnership of Athens-Clarke County Government Geospatial Information Office. Chris, if you'll go to next slide, who has made this project possible. We are represented as a research team across Augusta University, Kennesaw State University, and University of Georgia, and includes fabulous contributions from our graduate, doctoral, and master's students, and thankful for their time on this project. The primary goal of this project was to leverage information from the community about what would create impactful and sustainable change around promoting disaster resilience, primarily around flooding events. Flooding events are heavily influenced by economic developments, and in our setting, Athens-Clarke County has experienced a lot of socio-demographic and a thriving economic environment change over the past 2 decades. And so to that end, the establishment of a community engagement board early on gave us new ideas about effective ways to reach our populations, promote knowledge, and increase preparedness. The model that we're using is a pilot experimental trial. The component of the intervention is an implementation of disaster exercises, which we're very excited to share pretty thrilling results with you about today, which include leveraging smart communications technology that largely promotes mobility pathway resilience. We leverage geospatial information science and direct resident communication through smartphone-based apps, which are evidence-based through FEMA, and leverage the emergency IPAWS network. Chris, if you'll go 2 slides. The overall project motivation recognizes the importance of promoting neighborhood disaster preparedness. As I mentioned, Athens-Clarke County is a community that's experienced a lot of economic development and socio-demographic change over the past 2 decades. But what exists in Athens-Clarke County are a need to recognize mobility disparities and how that affects disaster response, households preparedness, which is something that we've learned from our engagement board, specifically our first responders, as an opportunity. And further, to recognize that across place, there exists census tract social vulnerabilities that must be recognized in order to create sustainable change. This project delivered disaster exercises to affect these pathways at the individual and household level. We leveraged high and low tech communication strategies like the smartphone-based app, and low tech communication strategies like water bill information to reach the whole of the community. The interactive GIS components are something that we hope will exist as a living document housed within Geospatial Information Office in Athens-Clarke County, and will address the concerns about residents about where they should go to seek resources in the event of an unexpected and very serious event. Next slide. Our baseline assessments conducted by Dr. Tu, who is our partner at Kennesaw State, helped us understand how there exists a lot of heterogeneity and social vulnerability across our school attendance zones. Shown on the right, hopefully demonstrates to you that there exist a lot of ways that, based on population density and locating residents near important waterways, places our population at differential risk. And so we need new ways of being able to reach each of these residents and promote preparedness. To better understand how individuals living in these settings experience their environment, we administered a pre-survey through Qualtrics to get an understanding of what baseline resilience look like, as well as what kind of strategies and preparedness households used largely to prepare for serious flooding events. Our post-disaster exercise surveys measure our implementation effectiveness around knowledge gains, as well as our primary endpoint, which is around having a plan for preparing an emergency bag to survive for 72 hours. Next slide. Our sample was majority female. Average age was about 44 years old. We had early 20 participants, as well as retiree households. 27% of our sample was non-white. And from a perspective of educational attainment, our sample was slightly higher socioeconomically advantaged with respect to education. 21% of our participants had children in the home, and 21% were above retirement age. So critical to this project was an understanding that our participants at baseline, only a third of them had a plan for safety in the event of a disaster, although 65% of them knew where to find preparedness resources. Already, our residents are 3/4 of them are receiving smartphone emergency alerts, which is promising because that means that's largely creating new strategies for delivering tailored communication to individuals will reach Athens-Clarke County residents. The primary endpoint that I mentioned about the intervention was to affect emergency bag preparedness in the households. And what we learned is that only 1/4 of our sample actually had already prepared an emergency bag or knew what resources they had in their home to be able to survive a flooding event for 72 hours. Very importantly, our sample had clinical risk. 8% had electrically dependent medical conditions, 31% had impaired vision, about 1 in 5 had impaired hearing, and pets, as always, are very important members of every home. About a third of our sample had those. Next slide. So let me tell you a little bit about the development of the disaster implementation and how our approach was inclusive of not just the communities, but also students housed here at the University of Georgia. Dr. Ritchie in a moment will share more about this and how it fed into our implementation. Foundationally, our approach is to think of those who would participate in this kind of an event as being an important nexus for promoting sustainable change. And so Rogers' diffusion of innovation theory was an important theoretical framework for us as we were crafting components of the disaster exercise implementation. Next slide, please. The components of diffusion of innovation theory acknowledge that adoption of new health and preparedness behavior depends on 5 constructs. That's relative advantage, compatibility, complexity, trialability, and observability and visibility. All 5 of these aspects were captured by our disaster exercises. And among these, the relative advantage component is one of the most important ways that we can influence residents to adopt new kinds of behaviors that will protect them in the event of a disaster and save lives. The interactive components of the implementation increase observability and visibility as peers were allowed to see each other becoming successful and also learning from each other about their experiences. This is an important way that the implementation was designed to directly work with what we see as leaders in our community. Next slide. And so the components of this implementation include a 15-minute lecture. So it's simple to deliver in a timely fashion. It introduces smart technology applications to ensure every participant has a resource that they carry with them throughout the day that can be a source of information and protection. A 20-minute active learning participant mapping exercise, a 5-minute popping into action. Flooding event has happened, reacting in the moment with what we have on hand in the room. A show and know disaster bag preparedness exercise, and finally closing with an interactive engagement with our GIS resources that will house within ACC Geospatial Information Office in the future. What I want to share that I think connects with Partnership for Inclusive Innovation theme is that our participants absolutely understood that the implementation itself was important. They found it interesting and thought-provoking. Even more important, they recognized themselves as an important member of being able to promote community resilience. In particular, acknowledging that as a citizen, they appreciate being part of the discussion and learning process, and they saw themselves as an early feeder into policymaking decisions that would have a lasting impact on Athens-Clarke County community. Next slide. And so what did we learn from the implementation of these exercises? Well, 3 things I want to share with you. Now, first is that low resource knowledge is a mitigation risk, and that's not surprising to us as disaster preparedness researchers. 100% of participants without resource knowledge also had no safety plan, and that's the purpose of this kind of an implementation. Having a plan also meant that individuals would likely have an emergency bag, 2.5 times more likely to prepare this kind of a bag when participants have a plan. And that connects to the prior research that we know about preparedness intentions. With respect to the SMART components of this project, SMART communications do in fact reach populations. We know that 3/4 of our participants already were receiving something like this. But there was 37% higher utilization when there is a plan. All this is baseline information. But following our exercise, thankfully, we learned that we had 100%, we reached 100% knowledge about resources, which was a 37% increase over baseline. That's a fantastic response to this early pilot implementation. There was also a 2.3 times increase in having a safety plan, leading to about 4 out of 5 participants reporting that they left the exercise with an actionable plan that was acceptable and compatible with the needs of their homes. It still means that there's 20% of our participants that we'd like to see still get additional information and learn more about what it would take to get 5 out of 5 complete 100% preparedness. But having 80% of our participants leave those exercises having a plan that they can actually enact is a fantastic outcome. And so next slide. So I want to hand over to Dr. Ritchie, who is our expert instructor on disaster preparedness and the thought leader on our team about the communication framework in the classroom that elicited these really favorable responses. Can I hand it over to you, Dr. Ritchie?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of fun actually doing these exercises. I get to nerd out and have like a captive but interested audience. And so what you see here in this picture is the first of 2 maps that folks were drawing on. So in red, we had asked them to outline where they think flood risk is. So kind of a test of knowledge to see, first of all, like their process and trying to think about where this is. So it's interesting to hear what they were considering, elevation and different processes that rivers have. And so that part was cool, as well as the actual map. And then the sticky notes and black lines are actually home spaces, and then the routes they would take to travel out of the area if they had to evacuate their home for at least 72 hours. And then what happened after this one is we had a second map, the same extent, same features, but an additional flood layer so that they could see how accurate their perceptions of where flooding was actually was. And then we had them remark their routes. So does this new information of where flooding for a 100 or 500-year flood coming in, does that change where your route would be? And so in many cases it did. And the other thing we had on that second map was our local emergency shelters. And so there was a lot of excitement around realizing, oh, maybe I don't have to go quite as far as I thought, or I didn't realize these resources existed. So it was cool to see both the processes of how they were figuring out where they would go and where flooding would be, but also how they would then take this new information to help their families be a bit more prepared. We also did a exercise I like to do in my classes. I call it like a pop quiz, but it's like a pop emergency bag where I asked, okay, with the items you have on you, how long do you think you would last in an emergency, and how well prepared would you be? And so it just gets folks started before the conversation gets deeper into the different items you should have. to really kind of put them on the spot, have them think about, oh, okay, if I had to evacuate right now, how prepared would I be? And so it's a little bit jarring sometimes, but it's also pretty, gets folks excited and gets them laughing and interested. So it takes these scary topics and hopefully through the mapping and the discussions, breaks it down in a way that makes it less scary. So if an emergency were to happen, they have that kind of muscle memory to lean back on instead of being thinking about it for the first time and causing panic. And
Thank
then-
you, Dr. Ritchie. And we'll close with what we'd like to demonstrate, which is an interactive model here led by our doctoral student and fabulous project director, Chris Carr. Chris, would you like to take over?
Yeah, thank you, Alan. So this image here, and I'll pull up the actual dashboard in a second. I'll just give people a chance to, if you scan the QR code, you can access the dashboard from your cell phone. So I'll give people a second to do that. But this picture is just showing a preview of what we created to both demonstrate or display where people can find resources in Athens-Clarke County, as well as evaluate their risk as well in terms of extreme weather and flooding, and also vulnerability. So let me just pause here and I'll pull up the dashboard for everyone. So if you scan that QR code, it takes you to our dashboard right here. And so this is just a map of Athens-Clarke County. And on the left here, you can see just some information about what's included in this map, as well as different tips on how to use this dashboard itself. So right now, it's just displaying the boundary of the county, as well as different emergency shelters and where they're located within Athens. And some of the features that are included in this dashboard, if you click here on the layers, you can add in different resources, such as where fire departments are located or police departments are located within Athens. And for those of you that were able to attend our site visit, you can see resiliency hubs that are located. So this is actually where we held our site visit in May, as well as prospective resilience hubs that are in the works of being added in. And then the interesting thing is we can also look at flood zones. So this is showing here the FEMA 100-year flood zones within Athens-Clarke County. So about a 1% annual chance of flooding, as well as social vulnerability. So this was shown in a previous map in our presentation. It's a CDC measure that gets at different social factors that play into vulnerability. So people are able to look at this within the dashboard. They can actually search for addresses, so they can look up their home address and see where they land on this map and where they are in terms of the different resources that are available within the county, as well as what their risk might be. The other features include just a find my location. So if you're not at home, but you're within Athens-Clarke County, you can click that button and it'll show you where you are on this map. And then another feature of this is you can change the base map layer if you want to look at actual satellite imagery of the county, in which I'm going to show in a second, just some different areas that we've zoomed in on that highlight some of the features of this dashboard and its uses. So I'm going to transition back over to the slides here. So here we're just zooming in on a specific area of Athens-Clarke County. And so this is a neighborhood within the county and its proximity to that flood zone that we were showing earlier. So here, this neighborhood, as you can see on the left, there's two ways to get into this neighborhood. And this side over here, it's pretty close to that flood zone. And I think as extreme weather accelerates, these 100-year floods are likely going to be occurring more often than that. So if an extreme weather event hits this neighborhood and this road is flooded and a tree is knocked over on this this road here, then this neighborhood is cut off. And this is something that community members can access this dashboard and start thinking about, that maybe we need to make sure that we have a plan in place in this neighborhood. And so that is another benefit of participating in our study and going through that exercise, downloading the FEMA app. So that's just an example showcased here. And then an additional example we wanted to show is an area where there's actually an overlap with existing homes in the flood zone. And so again, this is just emphasizing how this dashboard can be used to classify risk, and it can showcase how important it is for people to be prepared for disasters. And so this dashboard product we're excited about, and it will live on after the study. And a great feature of this dashboard is that it can be rapidly updated. So if we obtain geospatial data on a certain hazard or risk, we can quickly add that to the map, and it updates in basically real time. So we're really happy with this dashboard, and we're looking forward to different creative ways of getting it disseminated into the county, and available to the community members. So I think with that, we'll pause there, and thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll stop for questions.
That was excellent. Thank you so much, you guys. Great presentation. And we've got 3 questions in the Q&A. So, but we're also running over a little bit of our time. So, or not over, but, getting up against it. So if y'all can try to keep the answers kind of short, I'm just going to read the first one for the video. Currently, there's a controversy about Maui alert systems. Can we ensure that such a system operates fully 24/7 in case of a disaster? I know you guys were studying Athens and not Maui, but does anyone have any information about that question?
So Chris actually has a really thoughtful response to this, but something that was interesting to us that we didn't anticipate was how reliant on sirens our community is with respect to receiving emergency alerts. And that's something that Maui in particular has been criticized about with respect to implementing that. And Chris, would you like to share your insight with this larger group?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. So like Alan said, we have several participants that indicate that they're reliant on sirens. And so I think to address that question, it's we need to ensure that people are aware of the different mechanisms that their state and local government send out emergency alerts. And so that's part of what the disaster exercise is getting at, is educating people on how they can receive emergency alerts and in different ways. And so I think that's something that we're specifically looking at and interested in, and we're addressing in the exercise itself.
Excellent, thank you. Next question is, can you go on a little more about what you mean by a resilience hub?
Mr. D'Angelo, would you like to take this? This is something that's very exciting about how this project will live on in a larger form.
Yes, I would. So as Dr. Tate mentioned, this project led to a more extensive discussion on community resilience. And when we talk about a disaster resilience hub or a resilience hub in general, basically you're talking about a few different elements. One, being able to operate in the event of loss of electricity, a facility with a reasonable degree of functionality. 2, hardening the facility against disaster, particularly natural disaster, and 3, being located in an area where you're reaching multiple vulnerable populations, and you're able to service those populations either through commodity distribution or temporary housing. And so we have re-upped our disaster mitigation plan, and because of this project, and because we're thinking more in terms of community resilience and with those parameters that I mentioned above, we've had some unique opportunities to build into our designs recently for a library, a judicial center, 2 transit transfer substations, and youth and community centers, some of these more resilient measures. And then just yesterday, we got a little bit of a bigger win. We're working alongside Advantage Behavioral Health. We're building a new community and residential complex. And that complex is going to provide wraparound social services to vulnerable residents, but also it will be able to be equipped with, for instance, tracking pole-mounted solar arrays, banks of batteries, and then also some more defensible space for potential wildlife and flood mitigation, or wildfire, I'm sorry, above and beyond what was called for in the original iteration of the plan. So because of this project, we're thinking more about how we can design in a smarter way, in a more resilient way, some of our community facilities.
And would you just give a quick introduction of yourself and your title?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Joseph D'Angelo. I'm Athens-Clarke County's Chief Data Officer, and I'm also serving as the Interim Capital Projects Director.
Excellent. So he is the community project lead for their project. Thank you so much. Okay, next question. What is the historic experience of disasters in Athens-Clarke County, and what is community perception that a disaster can happen here or to me?
The most common that we hear from are related to either flooding events or extreme heat. Extreme heats would be one of those kinds of mitigation strategies that the infrastructure developments Mr. D'Angelo just presented on would address. For the purpose of this project, flooding events were the highest impacts that we heard from first responders. So that would be the community's perception of greatest risk. From our individual participants, we learned that we need to do more or focus more, at least concurrently, around addressing extreme heat waves.
Excellent, thank you. And the final question, what would happen to people who do not have access to a smartphone?
So this is why it's important to have both high and low tech solutions. And we talked quite a bit about reaching vulnerable populations. For example, our homeless populations may not have the same kinds of resources. However, there are programs to be able to provide smartphones to reach those, and other initiatives to make those cost effective. So it is smartphones are becoming more widely adopted and compatible with community values, also more accessible irrespective of socioeconomic privileges. And while those things are getting better and highly attractive for new mitigation and preparedness strategies, those lower tech solutions like utilization of radios, siren networks continue to be a really integral part of communicating risk directly to our populations.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Those were great questions from the audience. Thank you, guys. All right, so let's now move on to Henry County. Are you guys ready to go?
Yes, looks like you have to turn off the video, I guess. Okay.
What do I need to do?
I cannot start my video, but that's okay.
Oh.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connor and Partnership for Inclusive Innovation for this opportunity to present our project. Let me pull up my computer screen, and then we'll go ahead and get started with our presentation.
I think you had it right.
Did I?
Yeah, try again. Oh, so we're seeing your desktop now. Also, I think I must have some settings wrong that is not allowing people to turn on their camera. So I apologize for that. I can't figure out how to fix it. So I'm going to leave mine off as well. Sam, it looks like we're still, oh, there we go. Welcome to the.
You see it?
Yep, I think we see it now.
Great. So good morning, everybody. I'm glad you all have joined us. Thank you for this opportunity to present our project. My name is Sam Baker. I am the Director of Transportation Planning with the Henry County government, and I have been the community lead for our Henry County Smart Grant project. For our project, we partnered with the Georgia Institute of Technology and Clayton State University. I had the pleasure of working with a number of distinguished individuals on this project. They are Dr. Arthi Rao. Dr. Rao is Senior Research Scientist and Interim Director of the Center for Quality Growth and Regional Development at Georgia Tech. Dr. Irina Hayduck. Dr. Hayduck is Associate Professor of Economics at the Clayton State University. She is also the Director of Center for Research on Economic Sustainability and Trends. Mr. Abrar Mohammed. Abrar is a graduate student in computer science at Georgia Tech. Mr. Manikandan Parthasarathi. Manikandan is also a graduate student in computer science at Georgia Tech. We also had 2 additional Georgia Tech interns who worked with us during the 22-23 academic year, who are not on this panel today, but I do want to recognize them and acknowledge their contribution. They are Mr. Samuel Martinez and Ms. Anisha Pal. Our research team has developed a computer-based tool for Henry County. We are calling it the Henry County Smart Resilience Decision Support Tool. I know it's a mouthful, so let's just call it the Henry County tool. This tool of ours shows on a map of Henry County where it is more suitable to place freight-related developments and where it is less suitable to place such developments. And it does so through various shades of color and takes into consideration 5 different factors. They are environmental factors, social factors, transportation factors, land use factors, and Henry County public opinion. Now you might say, that's what a GIS map does. So what's the big deal? Well, our tool is more advanced than a typical GIS map. In our tool, next to the map of Henry County, it shows the 5 factors. Below each factor, there is a sliding lever that can be moved between 0 and 100 to give each factor a weight. It's just like a television's volume or brightness control button. Once I set the weight of each factor, I press a button, and in a few seconds, the Henry County tool generates a new map showing suitability of freight-related developments. Our tool is specifically for freight-related developments. And by freight-related developments, I am talking about warehouses and distribution centers, to be clear. Why is that? It's because Henry County is a major freight cluster in the Atlanta region. There are a lot of warehouses and distribution centers here. Goods are transported here from the port of Savannah, stored here, and then distributed to the rest of the Atlanta region. These freight-related developments bring jobs to Henry County. They bring tax revenue, but they also bring truck traffic, a lot of truck traffic to and through Henry County, and cause a lot of traffic congestion. We also have a lot of problems with illegal truck parking on county roads and highway ramps. As a result, they have generated strong feelings and reactions among our Henry County citizens, which is something I have observed personally in my conversations with them and reading people's comments on social media. That is why, out of all the different kinds of development, our tool is specific to freight-related developments. Now, let me give you a live demo of how this tool works. All the factors are set right now at 50. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set the land use factor at 100, making it the most important consideration, and turn everything else to 0. And I'm here assuming that that will be the primary interest of Henry County's Planning and Zoning Department. So let's click the reevaluate button and see what the tool does. Takes a couple of seconds. Okay, so based on land use suitability, what the tool says is the best places to place freight-related developments is along I-75, which goes through Henry County and near 75, as well as in Western Henry County in the Hampton area. Next scenario, I'm going to turn the transportation factor to 100, making it the most important consideration, and turn everything else to 0. I'll hit the reevaluate button. Let's see what the tool shows. If the consideration is that a freight-related development be on or near Henry County's road infrastructure, then what the tool says is the best place is close to I-75. And the farther away you're from I-75, the less suitable it is. What if Henry County's public opinion is the most important consideration? Then what does it show? So based on our online survey of Henry County public, what we found is that most of Henry County is red, not suitable, and only certain portions are marked as highly suitable. Obviously, it looks like there is some NIMBYism going on, not in my backyard. Nobody wants to live close to a warehouse or distribution center. And so that's what this tool shows based on public opinion. So that's a live demo of our tool. I'm going to now turn over to Dr. Arthi Rao to share with you the process that our team went through to develop this Henry County tool. Dr. Rao.
Thank you, Mr. Baker, for that really cool demo and introduction. I'm going to share my screen now. Hopefully I'm doing this correctly, so please bear with me. And so is everybody seeing the full slide screen, or the one with the notes?
The full
Yep.
slide.
Full slide.
Okay, perfect. So we're okay. All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. As Mr. Baker mentioned, this has been an absolute pleasure working with this team to develop this tool. And thank you again, Penn, for giving us this opportunity to collaborate and do something really meaningful for Henry County. And so what I'll do is I will, Mr. Baker, when you're ready, I'll forward the slides.
Please proceed.
Yeah. So, as Mr. Baker mentioned, there was, Henry County has, tremendous potential here from economic development perspective in terms of freight related infrastructure, but it has also caused a lot of, issues with the community with traffic congestion. So it was really we came in with this idea of building a tool to kind of reconcile some of these concerns, and how do we then integrate community input and build consensus around what really makes sense for the county in terms of future development, building on the economic trajectory that they're on, which is great, but also respecting the concerns that the community has. So we went about trying to envision and design a tool that would reconcile these concerns and opportunities, really. So these are some images of some of the issues that Mr. Baker already mentioned. So, images of congestion and illegal truck parking. So we did a couple of site visits and we captured these images just to kind of get ourselves familiar with what is really going on in the county. I will go through this conceptual model really quickly with an emphasis on what our tool hope to achieve in the short, medium, and long term. So to begin with, the objective of the tool was to really develop community consensus and provide some sort of an equitable and efficient decision-making process that was both data-driven but also considered community input. In the long term, as was the objective of the grant mechanism, was to promote social, economic, and environmental resilience, building of community trust and civic processes, and uptake of smart technologies and evidence-based methods for decision-making. So it was the idea was to build something that was really easy and intuitive to use, using community data, but also making sure that the community felt like they had been heard. So the first step in really developing this tool was to hear the community and understand what their preferences were. And so we developed this community survey that we deployed in Qualtrics. And the survey had 6 domains of questions. And then we wanted to understand community preferences for economic development, community preferences for green space development, and community preferences for freight development. So this is a rich data set, and we had 335 surveys that were completed in their entirety. So it allowed us to really get a sneak peek of kind of like what were the thought processes behind how the community felt about all of these opportunities and the current conditions in the county. The neat part of our survey that you can see on this next slide is that we weren't interested in just what they thought, but we also wanted to put kind of a spatial reference around where they preferred development. And we actually used, machine learning algorithms in a creative way to understand which regions even made sense for the community to consider. So we used a change detection process through clustering and other types of algorithms to look at how land use patterns had changed over time in Henry County. And we really detected these 5 regions. So we incorporated not just the what, but the where questions as well in the survey. And as Mr. Baker alluded to the fact that we detected a lot of NIMBYism coming across in the survey results. For example, everyone was supportive of affordable housing, but nobody wanted it in where they lived. They wanted it somewhere away, far away from their community. So it's interesting to see these, kind of conflicting, values and how they reflect in people's, in the community preferences. Most important component of one of the survey questions was to understand where the community preferred, freight infrastructure development going forward. And I will subsequently explain how we were able to incorporate that response into our tool. So as Mr. Baker explained, and you saw on the live demo, we had 5 domains of what we call objective and subjective criteria. So land use suitability, transport accessibility, environmental sensitivity, and social vulnerability were the objective domains. And we developed these domains through a thorough literature review of the scientific literature to see how, what were kind of the established parameters, indicators that we could incorporate into this tool. And of course, how could we then leverage that with the data that the county had, the GIS data that the county had, thanks to Mr. Herb Dillon, who's the director of the GIS department. And based on that, we developed these spatial criteria that we then incorporated into the tool. But then last but not least, it was the community input that we kind of were wrestling with in terms of how do we take a qualitative metric and convert that into a quantitative metric. So what we did was, in one of the questions, we were able to get at people's preference for infrastructure development versus their concerns with traffic congestion. And we computed a ratio of these two indicators, and then clearly the areas that had a higher preference for infrastructure development versus less of a concern on congestion is where we gave it the highest score. So that way we were able to take the community input metric and incorporate it into our tool. So that's another innovation in our tool. And before I do that, I'll also say that in terms of the objective criteria, you'll see a lot of spatial criteria here. For example, proximity, nearness, existing. So a lot of the, we did a lot of geoprocessing using Python scripts to really compute this. And this is why you see a lag when we change the weighting criteria. It takes a few minutes because what it's really doing is it's running all of these GeoPanda scripts in the background to update the suitability score for the parcels. And there's tens of thousands of parcels in Henry County. So that's why it's taking that time to refresh the tool and what shows up on the screen. So if you had to, in a very simplistic way, visualize what the tool is really doing is you have all of these layers, right? Geospatial layers. If for lack of a better comparison, it's like a layer cake that's laid on top of each other. And then we create some sort of an aggregate score, which then finally gives you the suitability. And the weighting of each of those layers is what is changeable, or the county has the ability to experiment with different scenarios. So by no means were we trying to be prescriptive, but give the county the ability to engage with data and really understand what different scenarios would present in terms of opportunities. And so that's really how we achieved this end result. Another thing that we did, and I'll hand this over to Dr. Haydock to talk about the Henry County community event and kind of what we learned from the community event and how we then incorporated that into the tool.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. So as Dr. Rao mentioned, active stakeholder engagement was one of the key components of our project. So to ensure that we obtain feedback from the government officials and from the public, we organized the community event that was held in May at the Henry County Government Center in McDonough, and Mr. Baker, who is a government lead on this project, put together a great agenda. He invited the representatives from the county leadership team, and the event started with the opening remarks from them, and also Ms. O'Connor was there to welcome the participants. And then we had two sessions. The morning session consisted of the set of presentations. Those presentations focused on the various smart technology applications that county adopted. And we also had an opportunity to present it to the participants, various economic development initiatives that county has adopted to talk about recent economic trends and inform them about the future outlook for Henry County. And of course, this event had to inform the public and the important government officials about the tool. So Dr. Rao presented an important information about this tool, and what was essential for us was also to obtain some feedback from the participants. So we conducted voting in Mentimeter on tool preferences. As I said, this was an all-day event. So of course, the morning session was essential because we had an opportunity to convey the information about the tool and to explain why it is important for the Henry County. But afternoon session was very fun, and Mr. Baker organized basically 2 tours. We visited the Emergency 911 Center as well as the Atlanta Motor Speedway Airport. And you see those pictures on the slide at the bottom of the page. Thank you. Now back to you, Dr. Rao.
Thank you, Dr. Hayder, for that overview. So the 2 key points from this slide is, if you can if you can see on the first bullet point, the title of the event was Henry County Technology and Economic Development Showcase. So the idea or the concept behind the community event was really to kind of draw awareness around all of the kind of the technological innovation that was happening in Henry County, and to string them together to really examine kind of Henry County's evolution towards becoming a smart county and a smart community, and all of the opportunities and the assets that they have to help them along this journey and this evolution towards developing into a smart county. And of course, the tool is it becomes yet another feather in their cap as they consider how they can evolve towards becoming smarter. And as Dr. Haydup mentioned, we needed community input in terms of what were kind of the main concerns, main priorities as well for the audience, predominantly either working for the county, or we had some public participants from the public as well. And sure enough, traffic congestion emerged as an important theme, and that kind of validated what we had seen in the survey earlier, and also helped us prioritize that particular metric and incorporating that into the tool. Now here we have a fairly simple diagram kind of explaining the kind of the back end, front end process, and who better to explain this than the folks who actually helped us build this. And so I'd like to invite Manish to very, very quickly kind of run us through the kind of the what's really happening in kind of the behind the scenes look of how all of this was created.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Manish. So I'm one of the interns who worked on this tool, like under the guidance of Dr. Rao. So my co-intern and I, Abrar, so we worked on the tool, and the tool is what you saw Mr. Baker demonstrate today. So let me just go over what we've actually done. So from the Henry County government, like we were able to obtain GIS data that was vital towards actually making the model that that runs the tool. And upon getting this data, we had to implement sophisticated geoprocessing processes to convert them. Like Dr. Rao showed us like a slide on objective criteria, And we ran geoprocessing scripts to convert these objective criteria into subjective suitability scores for each parcel based on, for example, proximity to natural areas. Like you don't want warehouses located near parks, or on health data, or based on traffic data, for example. So all of these values, we had to build models to establish suitability scores for each parcels and give them an appropriate score. So upon completing these geoprocessing scripts and getting a suitability score for each parcel, we had to convert them into a format that was suitable for consumption by the front end of the website. And that is what the first 3 steps of the diagram elucidate. And upon doing this, we set out to build the actual front end of the website. And after building the front end of the website, we successfully integrated it with the Henry County systems. And as you can see, that integration is what was demonstrated by Mr. Baker today. So that is what we had worked on with Dr. Rao and Mr. Baker for the last 3 months. Thank you, and I'll hand it over back to Dr. Rao.
Thank you, Manish, for that overview. And again, thank you both, Abrar and Manish, for really bringing this concept to life and, making it a real tool that we can now use. So thanks for that. I'm not able to, for some reason, I'm not able to forward my slides. There we go. So as Manish explained, this was the front end that was the final product of all of that hard work and complexity. So we already went through a demo, so I won't spend too much time on this particular slide. But it would be worthwhile to kind of reflect on some of the lessons we've learned and perhaps some of the challenges that we encountered. And we'll probably continue to think about as we look at the longevity of this project and the data and the tool itself. So the first 3 have to do with kind of the data processing, some of the statistical kind of concerns, and the main thing was how do we create measurable and comparable metrics across all of the criteria. So we had to think carefully about the statistical methods we used to do that. The next was to actually reconcile the different spatial scales because we had data that came from different levels, right? So we had tract level data, we had parcel level data, we had block group level data. So bringing everything to a kind of a common geographical baseline. So we chose the parcel because that seems to be the most intuitive unit at which the county does their planning. So we thought that would be the most practical, most useful scale at which to do the analysis. So a lot of spatial apportionment and those kinds of data engineering exercises that we need to bring them all down to the parcel level. And then, how do we create these weights? Are we using subjective methods or objective methods? And right now there's subjective methods to create the weights simply because the community can change how they want to weight their preferences. So, but there are objective methods that we can explore in the future if needed. There was certain unavailability of certain data sets. For example, we're still kind of talking through the environmental criteria because through geoprocessing, we were able to calculate a lot of the environmental sensitivity score, but there are certain areas that are not designated as environmentally sensitive. So it becomes challenging to integrate that into the tool and to know that upfront without having a data set that explicitly says that. So some of the environmental sensitivity scores may not make 100% intuitive sense. So we're still working through that. We initially set out to make a web-based publicly accessible tool, but on further discussions with the Henry County IT department, we realized that they were not very comfortable with actually giving full access of the tool to the public because of network security concerns. So we have a public component, which is more static, and we have a more controlled component, which is available to Mr. Baker, and they will figure out who to give that tool access accordingly, keeping in mind those network security concerns. So the other issue is, and this is a challenge with every tool I've developed, is how do we see tool maintenance and updates going forward? Now we have created extensive documentation that we have handed over to the county in terms of if any of the data sets, the underlying data sets get updated, how do we then incorporate that updated data set into the tool? So we definitely have a work process set up, but it remains to be seen and tested to see if it works seamlessly. So these are some of the challenges and kind of lessons learned and some of the current things we're reflecting on. So with that, this is the contact information for our team, and I would love to take questions at this point.
Thank you so much. First question is, got just a few, so if you can keep the answers short, we're running up on time again, but we do have a few questions. Firstly, any collaboration or partnership with a transportation or logistics company like UPS, FedEx, or Amazon?
Not in the current iteration, but something we can definitely think of in the future.
Okay. And can you post the Python scripts to GitHub is one of the other questions.
That is something we will have to think about.
All right. Well, those were very quick answers. Are there any other questions for the project team? And I also do want to mention that thank you for Manish for coming to speak. This project had 2 Smart Community Corps interns, which is one of the other pillar programs for the partnership, working on it. And so it was one of our cross-pillar projects. So we're very excited about that. So thank you all so much for participating.
So Katie, just a closing thought, like Mr. Baker said, this is focused on freight infrastructure development, but it's pretty easy to see how this can be expanded to other types of concerns, land use concerns, sustainability concerns. And so, the Center for Quality Growth would be happy to partner and explore newer avenues for how we can take this framework and use it to solve other types of problems. So that's definitely something that can be done. Yeah,
that is a helpful call to action for anyone who might be listening for for future projects. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And if you can unshare your screen next. Finally, we have the Savannah Alumni project team.
Have I unshared?
Nope, I think we can still see it. There you go. Okay. Oh, but there you go. Now we've got the new screen share. Thank you so much. Go right ahead, Cleo Andrus.
Hi, everybody. Can you see the display one or the one with the timer?
We can see the timer.
Okay, let's swap that.
There we go.
Okay, so I'm here today with Lizanne Roberts and May Lynn. And we're the Savannah team will be talking about 2 surveys. So the short survey is called Identifying Social Infrastructure in the City of Savannah through an Intercept survey. And then the longer survey is called the Savannah Connection Survey. These are our team members, and May's going to go first for a little while, and then we're going to switch over to Lizanne, and then we'll take any questions you have. All right, May, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm May. I'm a faculty member from Georgia Southern. So I'm here to share insights that we gathered from Savannah residents about the city's social infrastructure using this Intercept survey. Can you go next? So in the post-pandemic era, enhancing social infrastructure will be very critical to rebuilding social connections and community resilience. Therefore, in this part of our research, we aim to answer the following questions. So which points of interest facilitate socialization? Are these POIs easily accessible to people across neighborhoods? What places do people avoid, why, and what improvements would they like to see. And finally, we would like to find out what are the best practices and methods developed in this research that are likely to be useful for other communities. So our methodology, we conducted surveys through various community events at the Savannah Farmers Market and dog parks with both paper forms and a QR code for online completion. We thanked participants with small tokens. Here is an example of the short form survey. So as you can see, we collected a broad range of data about how Savannah supports residents' social interactions, areas of avoidance, and sought after city changes. So next.
Do we want to go through each of them?
I thought we probably have a tight time. We can go back when, if people have questions. Thanks. All right, so we then transcribed and validated the survey data and conducted a qualitative analysis for open-ended responses. So next. Next, we visualize our data through social infrastructure mapping using ArcGIS Pro. Places were extracted from the surveys and geocoded. So the produced maps highlighted the POIs by their mention frequency. So in our final step, we carried out accessibility analysis. So we calculated the walking, biking, and driving distances based on street network using OpenStreetMap in R. So our findings, first is the qualitative analysis. So this first question, we explored where participants in Savannah formed a new personal or professional ties by chance. So a significant number of respondents actually met the new individuals in outdoor venues like parks, farmers markets, dog parks, and the downtown area. Some other popular meeting spots also included the food and nightlife locations like restaurants and bars, as well as community events and services, including yard sales and neighborhood gatherings. So question 2, the responses to question 2 actually indicate that locations avoided by residents were often linked to safety concerns, overcrowding or commercialism. So areas like downtown at night and Yamakra Village were frequent areas of concern, while places like City Market, River Street were sometimes avoided due to perceived over commercialization. There are some other areas such as South Side and Tybee Pier are mentioned in the context of transportation or accessibility issues. So for question 3, respondents actually expressed a desire for enhanced recreational areas like places to bike and some more diverse social events in the city. So they emphasize the importance of citywide accessibility improvements. So people like to see better infrastructure, transportation. There's also notable demand for events that cater to a broader range of community groups. So which kind of emphasize the inclusivity and diverse social offerings. So our question 4, respondents were asked to list places in Savannah that help them spend time with others. So we identified a total of 263 unique POIs from the survey. As you can see from this bar chart. So these are the POIs that's being mentioned at least 10 times. So you can see Forsyth Park, Darkin Park, Tybee Beach are some of the most frequently mentioned places. SCAD, which stands for Savannah College of Art and Design, and a variety of restaurants, cafes, and bars will also frequently mentioned. So this is just looking at the POIs that were mentioned 5 to 9 times. Again, you can see a bunch of restaurants, some other cultural institutions, right? Like Bull Street Library. We also have Racing Stadium over here, some malls, civic center. So these are all kind of top attractions. All right. This POI map provides the visual representation of these popular places in Savannah, as you can see with Forsyth Park being a central focus. So for people who don't know Savannah, well, Forsyth Park is a significant green space and an iconic landmark in a historic center of the city. So there are two inset maps, one on the left focusing on the area north to Forsyth Park. The other is to the south. Points on the map are color coded based on how often they were mentioned in the survey. So the purple dots highlight places mentioned at least 10 times. We can see from the left, all these purple dots like Plant Riverside or the River Street, which you can see it's right across along the Savannah River. So that's another like very famous, iconic and historic location. It's known for its beautiful waterfront views and centuries-old buildings, right? So, and some other top attractions are City Market, Broughton Street, downtown, and of course, Forsyth Park, right? So to the south of Forsyth Park, we have the Sentient Being, and go down the road, we have Foxy Loxy Cafe, and we have Starland in the far end there. So these are all kind of, you can visualize where they are in Savannah, right? So there are a total of 91 neighborhoods in Savannah. So this table here gives us the summary statistics of the distances, the walking distance from neighborhood centroid to each of the POIs. So the first column shows the average walking distance. You can see the average walking distance to food and drink are notably shorter than all the rest, so which is 0.81 miles. On the second column, you can see is the median distances to POIs. So for most of the categories, they're around half a mile, which suggests that many of these amenities are relatively accessible by foot. The last two columns shows the median and the maximum distances between the centroid of neighborhood to the POIs. So you can see there's a wide range. The minimum can go as low as 0.01 miles. The maximum can go even beyond 8 miles, right? So there is this wide range, which indicate that accessibility can definitely vary significantly depending on one's location within the city. This set of maps shows the accessibility of various neighborhoods in Savannah across the 3 different transportation modes. So by walking, biking, and driving distance. Across 3 modes, you guys can see the darker green area, which are the North Historic District and the South Historic District. They definitely stand out as the most accessible areas. So if you look at the outskirts, especially the southeast region of Savannah, they definitely experience the lowest accessibility level, particularly in these neighborhoods such as like Wilshire Estates, Savannah Mall, and White Bluff neighborhoods. Some other neighborhoods around that area like Windsor Forest, Coffee Bluff, Rockingham Farms, they display even greater distances, which leading to even lower accessibility. So this citywide disparity definitely pose intriguing questions for our fuller research and analysis. So our challenges, we faced several challenges to start with, like the inclement weather definitely during the survey definitely limited the number of participants that we could reach. The non-legible handwriting made some of the responses really hard to decipher, which affect the data's quality. Some participants provided really ambiguous answers or really generic answers like my friend's porch, which make it really hard to geolocate. Formulating some of the themes that would resonate with the collective responses also posed another challenges. And then finally, trying to standardize these diverse responses was no easy task, given that there are varied perspectives of our respondents. So in concluding our research, we found several interesting patterns. So people living in Savannah don't really like to go to River Street and City Market, despite those are like the top attractions. So it seems that locals avoid places packed with tourists or where there's not much unique shopping. A lot of them enjoy spending time outdoors, and that's where they meet new peoples. Even though many people prefer events without alcohol, it's surprising to see that places with drinks are where a lot of the new friendships actually start at the first place. As for safety, people tend to prefer community efforts and improving neighborhoods over just having more police around. So with that, that kind of conclude my presentation here. Can you go next? So, oh, there's no, sorry. Just a huge thanks to the Ping and to the team. It's a really awesome work. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mei. Now we'll hear from Lizanne about our longer survey.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for working with Coastal Georgia Indicators Coalition. It's been a pleasure to work with Mei and Cleo and the team on this. And we'll move forward with the presentation. So we're an organization that serves the community in a variety of ways. We do a lot of strategic planning and data collection. And this is our second opportunity to work with this Smart Cities project. So we're really grateful for the opportunity. So the what and why, we're going to cover the survey instrument, and methods, the progress and initial results, recruitment and media, and then final thoughts. So the Savannah Connection Survey captures social connections in Savannah and how the city as an organization can best support those connections. We conduct the survey in person, and it's conversational, like an interview. I will show you some of the questions of that today, and each survey takes about 45 minutes to complete. Each participant receives a $25 gift card, and we also record via mobile app, and then notes are taken for the survey. We started the survey in June, end of June, and it will continue into the fall. Why do we need this survey? So urban design and interpersonal relationships must be studied together. We know that by building those infrastructures together with interpersonal relationships and studying urban design, that we can build happier, more thriving communities. The city can support interpersonal relationships with elements like green spaces and walkable areas and parks and dense clusters of destinations. So our contribution is to think about interpersonal relationships and spaces and activities. So this is a view of the survey questions. The first part of it is really about the basic demographic and background information, and then we'll proceed. Part two is around relationship and spaces. So we're looking for the relationship that each person has, and where the places and features and activities where they spend their time together. We really try to get as much information as we can from the person being interviewed, so we can really get a sense of where they like to spend their time and with people that they interface with. The third part are these open-ended questions, which is what they think about how easy it is to socialize in Savannah. What they think about the people in their lives, some that they may not have listed, who they would like to spend more time with in Savannah. What they think about city planners and what they think city planners could possibly do to improve social connectedness. And this is a latter part of the survey, focusing on how residents live and socialize, what challenges they're experiencing, and then what they believe is going well. So the places we're conducting the survey are the 3 libraries in the West Savannah area, and then the Sentient Being, which is sort of located in the center of the city. So far, we have 45 surveys that have been given. We've had a total number of signups of 97, and we project that we'll reach around 75 to 100 surveys by the end of the project. The respondent demographics are largely African-American. They're 85% African-American, 15% white. So this is kind of a sneak peek. What we found is that people are looking for more activities for families with disabled children, more bus drivers to help with transportation. That's a big thing. So making sure that the accessibility that May pointed out in her presentation, that there are certain areas of the city that it's hard to get to because the transportation is not available, and more free or low cost local events for those who have limited budgets. We looked at a lot of different resources and tried out a lot of different places to collect data. So we're working with St. Mary's Community Center, which is connected to one of our local hospitals. We worked on social media. We reached out community health advocates, some city facilities, the health department, a pop-up event with a farmer's market, another food distribution center, the YMCA, of course, our library systems that I mentioned, and professional listservs, and then back to school events. And now we're actually going to be working with a recovery center to do some surveys there. What didn't work? So the professional listserv did not work. I think we had one person from the listserv who reached back out to us. In the first few weeks of the survey, we used Google to try to push some information out, and we got attacked by bots. And so we're not sure exactly why where the bots came from. We had to clean that part of it up very quickly and move forward. And then the first 2 weeks, we spent some time going back to the folks that Cleo and May reached out to and tried to reconnect with them to do the longer survey. And we found that connection, that was more difficult for us to get people to the longer survey. What worked was we went to a back to school event, and it was very interactive. It was a really highly energized session. And so we collected contact information from 50 plus parents, and we're finding that they're wanting to do the more follow-up and do the longer survey. We connected with our library system. They're a trusted resource within our community. And so we're finding that we're getting more connections with folks that are interfacing with the library system. And then finally, we have a listserv that's a little bit different than the professional listserv, that's more about people who are social service agencies. And so we're finding that we're connecting with folks that way. We use some paper media to advertise the survey. We've put these in different locations around the city. So the next slide shows a QR code that they can connect to sign up for the survey, and a phone number that they can call. These are another paper versions that we've put into the library. And what we learned about recruitment. So we have a very strong coalition connected with partners. And so we were able to really reach out very quickly to our partners in different locations and gain access to promote the survey in different locations. Here's our survey team. Myself, Ayanna Parrish, who is a Georgia Southern MPH student, and Sydney Crow, who's an AmeriCorps Vista. And thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
It looks like we do have one question. Thank you, Lizanne. That was a great presentation. The question is, Savannah has many historical buildings / neighborhoods. Why did this survey not include maintenance or restoration issues or aspects?
Leo, do you want to
So the goal of the, are you talking about the first survey or the second one?
I think they're talking about the second one. Do you want to speak, Ms. Gay? If you want to unmute yourself, you can answer.
So the purpose of the second survey was to ask you who you go places with where. So where do you go with your kids? Where do you go with your spouse? Where do you go with your mom? Where do you go with your coworkers, your some of your friends? And so the goal of it was to capture where we go with different parts of our social network and how your social network is kind of attached to the geographic space and attached to events and attached to points of interest. So it was a little bit less about how we can manage infrastructure and how we can manage historical preservation, and a little bit more about how we can help support people's social lives and make sure that people have activities to do with everybody that they know, so that they can maintain those relationships.
Okay, did that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Oh, sorry, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All
I
right.
like Savannah, so.
Excellent. We do too. Well, thank you for the question. Did you have a follow-up?
Well, the only thing I may miss, because usually when people, they like to go to a place, there's a reason why. And I know, talking about myself, I'm really attracted, by historical building or places. So maybe if I can ask the question, like most people, they like to go to Forsyth. Why?
Yeah, so are you a tourist when you go to Savannah?
Yeah, I like to go visit with my family. Yeah.
Yeah, so it is nice to be able to unpack why people enjoy certain places. This specific survey was, why does that work for that personal relationship? Is it because you're going out somewhere with someone who's elderly? Is it because you want to go to the basketball courts there? Is it because somebody wants to be able to walk and get a little exercise? Is it because your family is vegan and you want to make sure that there are certain places there? So it's like, what about those spaces works for the pair of people, and not just like, what about them is attractive generally? And Lizanne, I'll let you chime in here too, if you'd like to.
I think from an infrastructure place, Forsyth Park is very unique in that it has about 20 entrances to the park, from the closer to the landmark historic district all the way up to the Park Street, which is the most southern part of the park. So there are all these entrances that people can gain access to. And if you think about the structure of where the park is, if you think about City Hall being the head, Forsyth Park is the body. It's like the body of the park, like the center, almost like the heart of the city. So I think that's another part for us to think about how we structure cities and neighborhoods, about how we create access points to that. And then I think the other part is that we started the farmers market in Forsyth Park in 2008. And when we started it, it was largely local people who shopped there. And we still have more people who shop there who are local than we do tourists. But now it's become a destination of people to make social connections within the community. And so a lot of our local events are held at that park as well. So I think that's another thing that draws people into that space.
Excellent. Thank you.
One of the things I do want to say is that we are being intentional about reaching out to reaching out to people in low wealth neighborhoods. Because we believe that it's important that we hear their voices and that we help them help the city understand what their needs are in terms of being more connected, because of the low access points that May pointed to on her slides in terms of accessibility for biking and walking and transportation. We want to make sure that we hear from those folks. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I think the next thing in the Q&A box is kind of more of a statement, but what you just said definitely supports that statement, I think. I just have one more question about the, you mentioned areas with missing transportation, or people that said there was missing transportation in certain areas, or they couldn't connect to the transit system from where they are. Do you guys have any location-based data about that, about where those areas are?
That's a little bit, May has done a little bit about that with the undergraduates.
Okay,
Right.
that's interesting. I'm curious to
yeah.
learn more.
Yeah, I think the survey data, definitely people will mentioning like, okay, to the Tybee Island, there's no transportation, but it did not really specify. So that's another like the challenges is that they did not provide like the really detailed response, but we do know that there are certain accessibility issues, especially in the outbound, like around the southeast that I talked about. Yeah, but we'll have to look into fuller and to look at the infrastructure there and see, are there anything need to be changed? Yeah, so.
Katie, you're on mute. So for some reason, I can't see the Q&A.
Oh, so the last comment just says, this survey data could be useful for city planning or even transportation planning, bike ped, with local input taken into account beyond census data and American Community Survey, including integrating local needs versus tourism and port commerce.
Thank you.
Certainly. And so, actually that's brings up another question for me, is the end result of all of this data. It sounds like, since this is a Georgia Smart project, the city of Savannah is obviously involved. So there must be getting the results of this data. Do you guys know, how they're planning to potentially use the information? I think you're muted, Cleo.
Sorry, I'm sorry. How the city is? We are going to work on that in our next steps.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, good. Well, are there any other questions for this project team? We've got about 2 minutes left, but thank you all so much for being here today, and everyone have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks.